Hi, this is Dr. Justina Agnieszka Chevalier. This video is pertinent to the series on civic education. I would like to first point out that the civic education, though videos are in English, it does contain nuances of the United States because I live here, I'm a permanent resident, and I arrived here to mostly, in the first place, obtain education. And however, if that would be propitious being an adult to personal affinity for persons and areas and also in animals, yeah, well, in also expectation that I could build here, being an adult, my own for life home. And so, but that does not mean that things that I am now teaching, and those videos are for any age. And for some persons, some parts will be redundant, some parts will not be redundant. Feel free to, screen through it and find out what it is that you can use as a teacher and what you can use actually for yourself to benefit yourself as a continuous education at any age. But the point here is that it is not pertinent only to the United States, because that, like I mentioned in prior video, division into left and right wing as a functional structure of the country is true for most countries that are democratic. I was taught in formal classes at Uniwersytet Warszawski, which is a renowned in Poland university, public one, in a program in a Department of Law and Administration as a formal law student, which I opted out of after a meeting to pursue career in medical arts for my personal gain, actually, to education, because I was, in my opinion, lacking such knowledge, and it shaped also what it is that I do and would like to be able to contribute based on my assessment and the demand still existing, well, for as long as we need it. And so that is the point here. This video is going to be, and is everybody from all countries is welcome, including my country of origin, Poland. This video, however, it has to be understood that though it is about drawbacks of, again, right, red, conservative or Republican party, drawbacks, those drawbacks are from distortions, certain distortions that we sometimes, in acts of hatred opposing one another or in criticism, can eliminate by a first proper understanding of what originally or de facto many persons mean by doing or saying certain things, and also do from that, because we are as a country a team in each and every country, and also a team internationally as all humans, do what it is that it is lacking in own life, professionally or personally, or in social structures, from a given political wing and ideology associated with it, to be well balanced and achieve such progress as a country first, because the scope of work work has certain radius, or internationally as an outcome, bringing harmonious human societies worldwide. And so what the drawbacks are in conservative parties or red ones, the main drawback is that persons are often in non-wanting so arranged against own will, as if a human was or is a possession. And so again, I underline, against own will, or not knowing what for self the best is, not having experience as such, be it as education, mark my words, that spurs a lot of suffering, or as empiric experience, some call it, useful experimenting. Not knowing what the best is, persons are forced to marry or to pursue belonging to a nuclear, however multi-generational family or tribe against own will or against own best interests. And that prevents persons, men and women, stories of that I have personally, in personal accounts and also as a human rights activist, there are many, as well as informal education, because I reviewed and collaborated on diverse legal cases, including with my dad now, a human rights lawyer who was my ex-father-in-law, so father of my ex-husband. I collaborated on those, and so I know those, there are many, and they still happen in the United States too. So what does this mean? It means that normally it is that the red and blue wings, they at some point become in harmony in a society that achieved certain standards as humans, one big blur, meaning it is wanted, so there is no such division, because we've achieved so much that social structures function well, and that the same is available, the same harmonious mental states and physical facilitations being civilized in here in the United States are available for men and for women of both philosophies and their families. Now, if that is not the case, that division of labor, in fact, into red and blue is something to choose from and know what the drawbacks are based on family settings, area settings. As you know, sometimes on those maps, political maps, we can figure out which area has which political views in majority, and based on own family also know what to oppose, how to oppose, what not to oppose, and how to not to oppose, and also what it is that is actually useful. For example, education often replaces, so feared by conservative parents, Republican parents, experimentation, especially sexual one. And that is sparable by what I'm doing here, by education, including sexual and or romance education. And so that is why often partial education that is offered in prudence in churches, so those metaphors and things like that, or very scientific de facto descriptions of a sexual act or childlike, devoid of emotions still, based on observation of parents, for instance, or lurked somewhere videos in disgust offered, to keep parents together sometimes, or, not to pursue that at a certain age sexualities. It creates an impression of a potent aversion, and one of the biggest drawbacks of conservative trends is to force against aversion, or as it is fine, settling on a marriage to an older person who is a family member, be it half sister or somebody else, or sometimes multi-person marriages in which a person, each of those persons, still lacks maturity or knowledge, and I underline here actually or knowledge, to know what it means to be in a relationship that's naturally based on the best volition of a woman and a man, not in violence or restriction of freedom imposed by families or such conservative structures, nor by imposing that often by a male, but sometimes by females in matriarchal type of family, popular, for instance, in some parts of Mexico, but also in Poland, imposing violence, restriction of freedom, including, being visible to others, covering faces like it's in Africa sometimes promoted against volition of that couple, or at least one member, and causing aggression and resentment because one or the other feels not loved, as opposed to what others are saying. And so that is an important thing to note. We all, in fact, want the same, having such education or having in the past experiences, like the generation of hippies or a generation of that grew up, some of us, liberal. We sometimes lack such sometimes influence and sometimes also access to education labeled as such and such. And that is important to change, because you see, what one went through in the past, and in many couples, is no longer overcompensating with strictness, spurs suffering to many adults and children in knowing what the best is. So again, replacement of possessive against will, a restriction of mobility, confining to houses, confining to marriages, impeding pursuits of career and work, impeding of relationships with men and women as equals, at work or in friendships, is one of the main drawbacks of conservative, Republican, or red parties. That is repaired with education, paradoxically, actually, one conservative derived education, in which one teaches, taking best couples, conservative ones, what it, in any trend, actually political one, what it means to be not wanting to have others at home, not wanting to work anywhere else, to limit contact with others, and having only family interactions with or without children, and for as long as those children wish to stay in harmony, meaning every single person in such a family agrees on that, and there was never anything that was suggestive of treachery in disguising such information, what is the best, or a limitation of freedom, or violence, imposing in violence, because placing by force a mask to cover the veil, face, when that person cries, I don't want to be covered up, and that person is a perpetrator, is not basis of marriage and not a sign of desire. Now, having such as a family, for sometimes men and women, wearing long sleeves or covering faces, it is a mark of being married de facto, which is for real. It means that persons in mutual desire do not wish to be looked at, for that's an example, by others, because wish to preserve self and pleasure of being loved for one chosen person. And that applies for men and for women. Remember that there are many tribes in the United States or abroad that use those men and women at certain stage of maturity. And in those relationship with others are simply, including so-called unlawful relationships or experimenting, are no longer possible, because one flinches away, a man and a woman, or does not want to look at, or does not want to be looked at anyone else, and children from those marriages are happy and very tied up to in the area. So persons do not abandon one another or children because they don't want to. They're happier that way, as opposed to being forced to it, which is a hostage situation. And then that situation has to be resolved in whoever opposes, whoever enforces, whoever in omission of use of legal system. It does not allow for freedom, development, whatever that means. You see, not finding yet that kind of greatest relationship is and opens opportunity for work and for education for all, as opposed to vain waiting or not having the best, not knowing what it is, which is the purpose also of education, including in religion or otherwise sexual education, and in examples of good couples or persons who have like a certain degree of experience being married or having that period of freedom to learn what it means to be happiest, you see. That is then important to say. The drawback also from that is attacking or forcing on others, for instance, only straight relationships. I know where it's from. However, any violence and resentment, though it can be explained, it is harmful, and there is no one that is inherently immature or inherently in such and such way but can make person